Thanks. I wanted to ask about the House spending proposal. It does not include money for national security priorities that the administration has. Israel, Ukraine, particularly Ukraine. What are the next steps for getting funding if the spending proposal is not an option?
So I will leave it to Karine to kind of talk about the congressional dynamics and particular measures that have been put forward in the House. What I will say is that the president, the Biden administration, put forward a funding request for Israel, for Ukraine, for the Indo-Pacific, and for the border. We detailed exactly what we needed, including for Ukraine, and we still need that, and we need it as soon as we can get it. And we are working actively with both the House and the Senate, both Republicans and Democrats, to secure the votes and to get the vote to get that funding. And I continue to remain confident that while this has been a winding road since we began the effort to secure additional funding for Ukraine, that there is a strong bipartisan majority in both houses to do it, and we will ultimately get it done. How exactly, through what vehicle and what measure, that's something that I will defer to the legislative experts on. I will only say that we are continuing to make the case actively. I'm on the phone personally daily with members, both Democrats and Republicans, to make the case. And we are leaning forward in making it clear that the United States national interest will be deeply harmed if we are not able to secure and sustain funding for Israel, Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, and the border.
And if I may ask about the trip, please. What is the president's message going to be regarding Taiwan's upcoming elections? Will the president warn President Xi directly, for example, against interfering in the elections?
I'm not going to preview what exactly President Biden will say to President Xi, because I think he should have the opportunity to speak to him directly in person without me proclaiming it from the podium. I will say that the president, broadly speaking, is going to set out a vision for peace and stability and the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. And he will do that in his meeting with President Xi. But in terms of the specifics of that conversation, I will leave that to the president to do person-to-person, face-to-face. Yeah.
Thank you, Jake. How confident is the U.S. that the U.S. and China can restore military-to-military communications? It's now been more than a year since China suspended those talks. So what are the main sticking points from the Chinese side?
I'll refer to China on the sticking points, because ultimately they'll have to answer that for themselves. The United States has been ready for that entire period to sustain military-to-military communications, because we think it's the only responsible thing to do. Having our two militaries in communication is the way you reduce mistake, you avoid escalation, you manage competition so it doesn't veer into conflict. That, to us, is an absolutely straightforward factor, and no matter what else is happening in the relationship, those military-to-military links should remain intact. That's our position going into San Francisco. We believe that the PRC has been constructive in the dialogue we've been having with them on this issue. We will see what happens in San Francisco, and the president will be able to report after the meeting whether, in fact, we've made progress on restoring military-to-military links.
What's your assessment for why the Chinese has been willing to engage so much more in recent months? How much of it has to do with China's economic struggles? And if that's the case, how can you be sure that what comes out of APEC is long-lasting and not just tactical from the Chinese side?
Well, look, I'm not going to speculate as to what China's motives are. Again, that's a question you should pose to them, and they can lay it out for you. I do think your question raises an important point, though, which is nothing stands still in the world, as we've just seen from the October 7th crisis. And there will be, inevitably, things that arise that are unanticipated. There will be turbulence, as there always is. And the question is, can we create the lines of communication and the broad parameters in the relationship so that through whatever comes, we can manage competition responsibly so it doesn't veer into conflict? That's what the president has set out to achieve in this summit with President Xi. And so he sees this not just as a one-off meeting, but as an important moment to be able to establish the kind of basis upon which we can proceed out into the future.